It was the most incredible do-over recorded in the Bible. The people of Israel were once again outside the gates of Jericho. They'd been there before, 40 years earlier. Their parents had stood in front of the same hostile, gated territory and walked away in defeat, scared out of their wits at the prospect of fighting the barbaric people behind the walls of Jericho. The earlier group said, "We're too small, we're too weak, we're outnumbered, we're ill-equipped, we're insignificant compared to them." And they turned against God and their leaders Moses and Aaron, asking, "Why did you lead us out of Egypt towards this death trap?" Life teaches us in two ways. We either listen to wisdom or we learn through consequences. Well, those leaders responded with wisdom, and when they didn't listen to them, then God responded with a consequence. Let's turn to Numbers 14. Numbers 14. And I'm going to read from verse 6 in the Message. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, members of the scouting party, ripped their clothes and addressed the assembled people of Israel. And they said, "The land we walked through and scouted out is a very good land, very good indeed. If God is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land that flows, as they say, with milk and honey, and he'll give it to us. Just don't rebel against God. And don't be afraid of those people. Why, we'll have them for lunch. They have no protection, and God is on our side. Don't be afraid of them." But up in arms now, the entire community was talking of hurling stones at them. Just then, the bright glory of God appeared at the tent of meeting, and every Israelite saw it. And God said to Moses, "How long will these people treat me like dirt? How long refuse to trust me? And with all these signs I've done among them, I've had enough. I'm going to hit them with a plague and kill them. But I'll make you," meaning Moses and Aaron, "I'll make you into a nation bigger and stronger than they ever were." Well, Moses and Aaron pleaded with God to spare the people, and he did. Instead of killing them right away, he declared that evil generation would die off through 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And so now we come to Joshua 6. And the children of that evil generation are now grown, and they're once again before the gates of Jericho. How will they respond to God and the new designated leader, Joshua? I'm going to go through all of Joshua 6. It's a little long, but we're going to go back and refer to it throughout the entire message. So let's just dig into Joshua 6. I'll try to talk as fast as possible because it is a little lengthy. Jericho was shut up tight as a drum because of the people of Israel. No one going in, no one coming out. God spoke to Joshua, "Look sharp now. I've already given Jericho to you, along with its king and its crack troops. Here's what you are to do. March around the city, all your soldiers. Circle the city once. Repeat this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horns, trumpets in front of the chest. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times. The priest blowing away on the trumpets, and then a long blast on the ram's horn. And when you hear that, all the people are to shout at the top of their lungs. The city wall will collapse at once. All the people are to enter, every man straight on in." So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and told them, "Take up the chest of the covenant. 7 priests are to carry 7 ram's horns, trumpets, leading God's chest." Then he told the people, "Set out, march around the city, have the armed guard march before the chest of God." And it happened. Joshua spoke, and the people moved. 7 priests with their 7 ram's horns, trumpets set out before God. They blew the trumpets, leading God's chest of the covenant. The armed guard marched ahead of the trumpet-blowing priests. The rear guard was marching after the chest, marching and blowing their trumpets. Joshua had given orders to the people. He said, don't shout. In fact, don't even speak. Not so much as whisper until you hear me say shout. Then shout away. And he sent the chest of God on its way around the city. It circled once, came back to the camp, and stayed for the night. Joshua was up early in the next morning, and the priests took up the chest of God. The 7 priests carrying the 7 ram's horns trumpets marched before the chest of God, marching and blowing the trumpets, with the armed guard marching before and the rear guard marching after, marching and blowing of the trumpets. On the second day, they again circled the city once and returned to camp. And they did this for 6 days. And when the 7th day came, they got up early and marched around the city the same way, but 7 times. Yes, this day, they circled the city 7 times. On the 7th time around, the priests blew the trumpets, and Joshua signaled the people then, shout, God has given you the city. The city and everything in it is under a holy curse offered up to God. Except for Rahab the harlot, she is to live, she and everyone in her house with her, because she hid the agents we sent. As for you, watch yourselves in the city under holy curse. Be careful that you don't covet anything in it and take something that's cursed, endangering the camp of Israel with the curse and making trouble for everyone. All silver and gold, all vessels of bronze and iron are holy to God. Put them in God's treasury. So the priests blew the trumpets, and when the people heard the blast of the trumpets, they gave a thunderclap shout. The wall fell at once, and the people rushed straight into the city and took it. I know that was long, but there's some very significant things I want to point out here. I want to say, this is the strangest military plan ever devised. Imagine a general today saying to an army that the way we're going to defeat this fortified city is we're going to walk around it 6 days, and on the 7th day we're going to walk around it 7 times, and they give a great shout. Now, did this make any sense in the natural? No. Made no sense. So why did God choose to defeat Jericho this way? I haven't given you any clues, so I can understand you don't know. Now remember, when Moses and Aaron stood before Jericho the first time, God just said attack. That makes sense, right? Attack. Take your swords, your battering rams and everything, and just storm the city. But the second time, when Joshua stood before Jericho, he commanded the people to be silent, walk around it, and then shout. Why such different tactics? Think about it. Why was God's plan for victory with the second generation so different than it had been for the first generation? What was the difference between the first generation and the second generation?
It's not rhetorical.
Yeah, that's not rhetorical. Do you think I gave you enough clues? Okay, it's okay. I'll put you out of your misery. The difference was trust. Trust. The second generation trusted God. And because they trusted God, they trusted the leader, Joshua. So when Joshua came to them and said, okay, this is how we're going to defeat Jericho. We're going to walk around it. We're going to keep our mouths shut. And we're going to shout the walls down. What do you think would have been the response if Joshua had said that to the first generation? They would have gone even more berserk. This is stupid. But the second generation had learned to do what? They had learned to trust God. So when the second generation heard the commands, and because they trusted God, and they trusted God's leader, they knew that nothing is impossible with God. That's the first principle I want you to take away from today. You see, we all got a Jericho in our lives. It's an impossible situation, an impossible goal. And if you look at it in the natural, you'll start to feel like that first generation, full of doubt and fear, struggling with feelings of defeat and failure. You say it's never going to happen. The odds are against you. That's first generation thinking. Now contrast that with second generation thinking, which is not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. All of us have a personal Jericho that cannot and will not be defeated by our might and our power. If you want to defeat it, you're going to have to recognize it for what it is, a spiritual battle. You see, if you could have defeated it on your own, it would be gone by now. Correct?
Correct.
Your Jericho is the spiritual battle that you're in that won't go away. And it's because it's something you can't fight in your flesh. You don't have the wisdom for it. You don't have the strength for it. You don't have the grace for it. You don't have nothing for it. You're done. I don't know what else to do with it. It's a spiritual battle. You can only fight this kind on your knees in prayer. There are some things in your life that will not be accomplished by your ability. These things will only be done by God's ability. Psalm 105:4 says, "Trust the Lord and his mighty power. Remember his miracles and all his wonders and fair decisions." Micah 7:7 says, "As for me, I look to the Lord for help. I wait confidently for God to save me, and my God will certainly hear me." And Psalm 27:3 says, "Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will be confident." And Romans 8:31 says, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" And 2 Kings 6:16 says, "Fear not, for those that be with us are greater than those against us." And 1 John 4:4 says, "The one who is in you is greater than he that is in the world." Amen. And Hebrews 13:6 says, so we can confidently say, "The Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me?" In January 1956, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. received a threatening call at his house. It was not the first message like this that he'd received, but this night, as his children and wife slept nearby, the weight of the civil rights movement was just too heavy, and he decided the risk was too great. So he began to map out an exit plan. And he said he remembered about midnight, he bowed his head over the kitchen table and he began to pray, "Lord, I'm afraid. The people are looking to me for leadership, and if I stand before them without strength and courage, they too will falter. I am at the end, and I have nothing left. I've come to the point where I can't face it alone." And Dr. King said, "At that moment, I experienced the presence of God as I have never experienced him before. And it seemed as though I could hear the quiet assurance of an inner voice saying, stand up for righteousness, stand up for truth, and God will be at your side. When we face an impossible situation, like he did, we have to shift our focus and turn to God. Paul and Silas were in prison. They could have focused on their chains, but they shifted their focus and sang praises and hymns to God. And God heard them and sent help. David faced Goliath with the help of the Lord. And Elijah faced Jezebel with the help of the Lord. And Daniel faced the lions in the den with the help of the Lord. And Paul, he faced the whole Roman Empire with the help of the Lord. So you, in your spiritual battle, you have what?
The help of the Lord.
The help of the Lord. He gave that promise to Dr. King. He gave that promise to Joshua and all the saints in the Bible. And he gives that promise to us. Many years ago, I was having a conversation with a former member. And she was telling me how God had helped her with an impossibility. You see, she was determined she was going to murder somebody. Her oldest son was killed by a thug, and he got away with it. The eyewitnesses were too afraid to say anything to the police about him. And his freedom and her son's death, it tormented her. Well, the mother knew the club where this thug hung out, and she went there with every intention to lure him to a secluded hotel, seduce him, and while he was in a vulnerable place, she was going to kill him. So she got dressed up in a revealing outfit, and she went to that club. And she slid up next to him and let her intentions be known. And he responded. And they agreed to meet at a nearby hotel. She said she went to the ladies' room. And when she was in there, she began to shake violently. She said God showed her a dark cloud of evil, ugliness surrounding her, and it was going to take her life. And she said this cloud so frightened her. She ran out of the club, and she didn't stop running until she got inside her door. And she fell down on her bed crying, asking God to forgive her and help her. And it was at that moment that she felt the presence of the Lord in her bedroom. And a peace that passes all understanding, embracing her and dispelling that evil cloud around her. And she said from that day forward, she was able to lay to rest her hatred and her anger towards that thug who took her son's life. And years later, he was killed in a gang shootout. And she said, you know, I was able to pray for his soul. Her Jericho was hatred and unforgiveness with what had happened to her. But with God's help, those walls came tumbling down. Amen. We need to know that God is here. He is our protector, leader, commander, deliverer, rescuer, provider, healer, savior. And he promises that none of us will face our Jerichos alone. Ephesians 1:22 says about him, says he is in charge of it all, and he has the final word on everything. And Hebrews 1:3 says, he sustains everything by the mighty power of his command. All authority has been given to him. His presence is our inheritance. And Psalm 16:5 says, "O Lord, you are the portion of my inheritance and my cup." God comes to his people. I have told you the time I experienced that profoundly. It was the day my dad died, and I told you how I was in the airport. And the only plane, the last plane where they said if you get on that plane, he might still be alive when you get here, canceled. And they said the next plane wouldn't be until later that afternoon, 6 hours later. I knew he was going to die and I would never see him alive. And I fell apart. I didn't care. Surrounded by hundreds of people, I wailed. I could care less. I was making everybody uncomfortable. I was screaming in pain. I felt all alone, and I was hurting, but God showed up. Everybody else seeing this crying woman would have passed by and said, "Ooh, no, Lord Jesus." But I told you, his blonde, blue eyes, I remember his beautiful blue eyes. He just sat next to me and started to talk. The most comforting tones. I'll never forget him. And slowly, my sobbing and tears stopped. And I thanked him. And it was only later that I was able to thank God for sending someone to me in my moment of need. Because God said, "Farida, I see you. I am with you. And I care." We are never alone. Hold on. Because the enemy will always tell you, nobody cares about you. Nobody's going to do anything for you. It's a lie. Because God says in Hebrews 13:5, "I will never leave you. I will never forsake you." So no matter how strong the Jericho is, this wall that seems like it'll never move, Jesus is stronger. Again, I remind you, there will be things that you can get rid of. You can tackle in your own strength and ability, but not everything. There's some God-sized things in all of our lives. And with these things, you're going to have to partner with God. He's going to give you what you need. But as we've said over and over again, we have to receive it. The only difference between the first generation Israelites and the second generation Israelites was that one accepted God and walked in the power of God and trusted in the Lord. That was the only difference. So what do you need to do to experience the power of God in your life? What do you need power for? You need power to forgive somebody who wronged you? God's got it. You need power to break a habit? God's got it. You need power to control your tongue or your anger? God's got it. Power to deal with an inappropriate sexual desire? Power to be disciplined about prayer and Bible study? The power to tithe, to save, and get out of debt? The power to believe that your family will be saved? And the power to trust God for healing? Whatever your Jericho, God hears you. And he's going to help you. Because he's got you. But you have to humble yourself and recognize that you can't do this alone. What did we say say is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I told you a couple of weeks ago about the lady who wanted to get out of debt with her MasterCard, so she said, "Can I use my Visa?" Admit that you can't do this by yourself. Also, admit what is the spiritual battle. Because if all your strength, all your wisdom, all your whatever, trying to get this, that, and the other to happen, if none of that has brought it to pass, guess what, folks? You're in a spiritual battle. Why do you need to know that? So that you'll stop. You'll stop trying to fight with the weapons of your warfare. God wanted to bring Jericho down by his power. And he wanted that second generation to know that if you put your trust in me, I'll take care of it. That's why he did it that way. Oh, walk around the city and then shout. But who brought the walls down?
God.
God did it. He doesn't need us to bring down our walls. He just needs us to trust him that he will bring down our walls. There's a difference. The second thing that I love about this very intricate military plan was one of the commands that God told Joshua to tell the Israelites. He said, tell them to be silent. Well, why did God tell them to be silent? I haven't given you enough clues, so it's okay. Remember, what caused the defeat of the first generation? Say that louder, please. Their mouth, murmuring, grumbling, complaining. The first reason they were defeated is they didn't trust God and the leaders. Second reason they were defeated is that they murmured and complained to each other. So what does God tell the second generation to do?
Shut up.
Shut up. Shut up. Be silent. Don't you think that as they're walking around these walls, don't you think somebody's in that crowd of hundreds of thousands of people or thousands of people saying, what in the world? What? This is stupid. This don't make no sense. Somebody was thinking that.
But they didn't say it.
But they didn't say it. They didn't say it. Yes. God didn't want them to talk to each other. He just wanted them to trust him and be obedient. See, there's a time and a place for talking. That wasn't one of them, right, Claudette? Because here's what happens when we start sharing our fears and our insecurities with each other. We sabotage the plan of God. You think this is going to happen? I don't know. I don't think this is going to happen. Do you think this is going to happen? God knows. I don't know.
I'm too tired.
I like that. I'm too tired to walk around the wall. When you're facing a spiritual battle, a lot of times people don't understand. Because it's looking at it with their natural eyes. And in the natural, they're going to tell you all the things you need to do. Well, you know, you need to follow this plan, or I got some tapes, or, you know, listen to whoever, Joel Osteen, Joseph Prince, David Jeremiah, Charles said, here's the answer for you. Go see a therapist, take some medicine, whatever. And it's not that those things are wrong, but if it's a spiritual battle, you do not exclusively use the weapons of understanding. Because you can't understand it. It makes no sense. You have to fight a spiritual battle with spiritual weapons.
Amen.
Years of slavery had deeply impacted the first generation. Their experience had been abusive authority figures who were not to be trusted, who didn't care about them, and who were often ruthless and even lethal towards them. And they never got over their scars. It didn't matter what God did. Not the miracles, not his presence, the cloud by day and the fire by night that went before him. Not the anointed leaders, Moses, Aaron. Nothing could convince them because they were scared and they were scarred. And that generation never entered in. Our insecurities and our fears will blind us to the truth. I read this quote that said, relationships fail because we take our insecurities and we twist them into other people's flaws. They could never see God because they always saw Pharaoh. Another reason to learn to be silent is not also because one reason is you won't find any more companions to commiserate with you. But another reason is that you need to hear God. If you're talking and complaining, it's hard to hear God. Especially when somebody else is in your ear echoing back to you. Yeah. You see it like that? Yeah, I see it like that. It's awful. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah.